Hi, and welcome to Mondays with Marlo. I'm very excited. I'm here with the real Dr. Phil today in his beautiful house in California, and his wife Robin showed us around. They're a great couple, and he, as you know, is somebody who seems to have the answers to a lot of questions, not just about relationships and parenting, but he's also very concerned with bullying and what's going on in this country, which, as you know, is a passion of mine. So I'm very excited to have you. Welcome, welcome.
Well, I'm just tickled to get to meet you because Robin and I have been fans for a long
Oh, that's
time.
so nice.
We were fans of your dad's before, which dates me, I know, but fans of yours as well. So we're proud to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, we have so many questions, as you can imagine. We just got millions of questions for you. Glad this is, there we go. Okay, so this is from Lynn. She says, "Hi, Dr. Phil. I'm 52 years old, divorced for 4 years, raising 2 teenagers. How do I get back into the dating game at this age? I've tried dating sites, but I hesitate on meeting someone from the computer. Maybe it's my age, I don't know. I'm healthy, active, a good mom, good sense of humor, but paranoid from all the hurt I've gone through with the divorce. What advice can you give me? I don't want to grow older alone. And my kids, I think, want to get me out of the house anyway."
Well, all right, that's a good question. Now, what's her name?
Her name is Lynn.
Oh, we got her name? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Lynn, first off, you don't need to be afraid of meeting people on dating sites because I think that's actually a very efficient way to do things. But you have to remember safety first and understand that what people put on the internet may not be real. It may not be what they really look like.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, you get a picture on there and it looks like Tom Cruise and you show up and he looks like me, you've got a problem. So you got to understand that there can be some real issues, and you want to keep safety first. And by that I mean once you talk to somebody and decide to meet them, take a friend, meet them in a public place for a short period of time. Go to Starbucks, go somewhere that there's a lot of people around so you don't have any problem. Don't give them your cell phone number, don't give them your home address, don't give them anything that allows them to track you down until you know something about them and you're comfortable with it. So safety first, and maybe it is age, because we didn't grow up with computers.
No, I could never do it. I'd be terrified.
Would you really?
I would be.
But it's, I actually think there's advantages to it because you can go through and pre-screen a lot of people in a short period of time.
Yeah.
As opposed to going to a bar or even your church or whatever, you at least get a chance to have kind of a blind review.
Right. And it's better than your friends fixing you up with people that are
oh
just
my God,
awful.
that's horrible.
That's really awful.
Yeah, she makes her own clothes. You want to meet
and she's got a great personality.
Exactly. Run.
This is from Melissa. Why do you think children today are having a more difficult time distinguishing between right and wrong? Do you think that's true?
I do think it's true. But, something that amazes me is that adults, people in our generation, talk about the younger generation as though we have nothing to do with it. They are blank slates, and we write on those blank slates every day. So I do think they have a problem with right and wrong, and I'll tell you why. We are bombarding them with the wrong messages. Who are their heroes today? Their heroes are people that are oftentimes in the media for all the wrong reasons. We glorify and glamorize drugs, alcohol, sex with really young people, violence, fast cars. We do all of these things. We say, this is what you want to aspire to. And then when they do, we look at them like, why are you doing that? Well, you're doing it because those of us who run the media bombard them with these images. When you and I were growing up, there were like 3 channels, right?
Exactly.
We were watching I Love Lucy, Gunsmoke, Dick Van Dyke.
Arthur Godfrey.
Yeah, exactly. Now there are 500 channels. Yeah. And the filter on them is not very good. So we have to be really careful. And I'll tell you this. You are not the only voice in your child's ear, so you need to be the best voice in your child's ear. Don't give it up to some electronic babysitter. You still have a chance to be a big influence.
Good for you. That's great advice. Okay, this is I can't find the name here. She wants to know. This is from Thumpson.
Thumpson.
Do you think there's something wrong with the way we're dating now in college and how sex always comes first? Do you think we should be worried about the way that we're approaching sex? So I bet Thumpson's in school.
Well, Thumpson, that's up to you. You say sex always comes first. That's your choice. If you're letting it come first, then I've always said when you choose the behavior, you choose the consequences. So if you choose that, then you need to be prepared to deal with all that entails. And You know, I grew up with three sisters. My mother used to quote that old saying, "Why buy the cow if you can get the milk free?"
That's what my mother said.
Exactly. But it's good advice,
Yeah,
don't
it
you
is.
think?
Uh-huh.
I mean, if
Just
you...
like not to be talked about like a cow.
I know, you know, you didn't
I
know my
got the
sisters.
idea.
They were cute. I had very cute sisters. They were very, very cute. But seriously, you have to decide what your priorities are and what your timeline's going to be. You have that right. And what I would ask you to do is value yourself enough to do two things. Number one, don't let yourself be used by someone. And number two, have enough confidence in yourself that you're interesting enough that they'll stay around even if you don't do what they tell you they want.
That's great. This is from Lisa. Please come to Boynton Beach, Florida. I have the perfect case study for you. She's a 52-year-old woman with many issues, not the least of which is denial. Here's my question. How do you break someone of that habit?
Well, Lisa, that ain't your job.
Uh-huh.
Okay? That's just not your job. And when you're dealing with an adult, you influence them. You don't control them. You don't tell them what to do. And if they're in denial, and who knows about what because you don't say, all you can do is inspire them. You can try to say, listen. And listen, goes beyond this question, but this is something that I think is really important for people to understand. If you're having an argument with somebody, a disagreement with somebody, your goal should not be for them to agree with you. It should not be for them to comply with what you want. Your goal should be that they understand how you feel, and then let them make their own choice. And people that make enough choices that are compatible with you and what you value, those will be friends and people that stay in your life, and those who don't won't. But you can't make somebody feel the way you want them to feel.
Right.
You set your goal and say, I want you to understand me, and once you do, I'm going to let you make the choice that you're going to make. Friends last a lot longer if you take that approach.
I bet that's her mother, too.
Yeah, probably.
This is from a person named Storm. My son is afraid to go to sleepaway camp for more than 5 days because the last time he went, he was horribly homesick and he was bullied by the other campers. How can I help him get over this fear? I know the camp experience would be good for him, and I'm torn between understanding and accommodating his worries and pushing him to a new level of confidence and competence.
Well, first off, understand that when you do have a camp, there are adults in charge, and they understand kids. And what you want to do is not go in an accusatory, hysterical way. You want to sit down with the camp counselors and you want to say, look, we've had a bad experience. So I want to sensitize you to that and let you in on the fact that he has a confidence crisis here. He's been bullied in the past, and I don't want to handle him with kid gloves, which distinguishes him in the negative, but I do want you to be on the alert for it. And then here's the thing. Give your child a panic button. If he knows that he can eject if it really gets bad, then two things will happen. Number one, he's likely to go. And number two, his threshold for tolerance will go up because he knows he can get out if he has to. Give him a panic button and enlist the aid of the camp counselors because they'll help.
That's great. That's great advice. It really is.
I got lucky on that one.
That was wonderful. This is from Julia. Dr. Phil, I love when you have your family on the show. You all seem so happy. I want to know, what's the toughest family issue you have faced and how did you resolve it?
Well, thanks for the question. And every family has issues. I mean, certainly as people grow up and you face different challenges along the way. But I have to say, for us, we lost my father at a relatively young age. He was just 72 years of age. And that was the first real death experience that my boys went through. And it was the first parent I had lost. My mother's still alive. But really helping them to understand what all of that meant and how to deal with that and get over the fear that, well, gosh, now are you going to die, Dad? Is Mom going to die? All of those issues. And I will say we raised our boys in a God-centered home, and so that was a great comfort for them. But that was probably the biggest issue, was the first time they dealt with death of someone really close to them.
That's a big issue.
Yeah.
This is from Lana. What's the worst mistake parents make when their child is getting bullied? And what advice can you give to all parents today who face the same problem with their kids? This is such a big thing, Dr. Phil. This
Well,
such
it
a big
is,
thing.
and thank you for all of your work and
Thank you.
focus on
Yeah.
this. I mean, you do a great job on
Thank you.
that, and I won't even get started on St. Jude's and
Thank you.
all you do there.
Thank
But
you.
look, here's the biggest mistake I think people make on this front. We have the tendency to think kids will be kids, and so this is just part of growing up. When you are being bullied, that is one of the loneliest times in a child's life, because the number one tool of the abuser is isolation. They isolate your child, and if they're isolated from you because you don't get involved, or because they're too ashamed to tell you because they don't want you thinking that people don't like them, so they hide it from you, then they can become very, very alone, and you don't want to leave your child alone when they're under attack. Secondly, don't run up the stairs of the schoolhouse with your hair on fire, yelling and screaming at the teachers. They're on your side. Bullies are smart. They don't do this in front of the teachers. They do it when they're not there. They do it behind the building. They do it in the halls. They do it on the internet at night. So they don't do it where the teachers can see it. The teachers are on your side. They want to help. So enlist their aid. Don't accuse them of being in this with the bullies. And then talk to your child and let them know that telling is not tattling. They need to have an adult that they can go to for help. And at some point, the bullies have to be dealt with. And your child will say to you, "Mom, don't say anything, you'll just make it worse."
Right, that's what they do say.
That's not true. If you handle this properly, non-hysterically, this bully will be dealt with. And bullies need punishment, but they also need help, because it's the bully that's sick here. And oftentimes they've grown up in a violent situation or a home where it's been modeled for them. So understand they've got problems that they need help with, but don't leave your child alone. Support them, help them, and make sure they don't take over for the bully. And what I mean by that is the bully can say, you know, "You're a geek, you're stupid, nobody likes you." The bully leaves, and then the child repeats in their head, "I'm a geek, nobody likes me, I'm stupid."
Yeah.
You don't want to let your child take over for the bully. So teach them how to listen to that internal dialogue and create one that's more constructive.
Right, and help them understand how valuable they are.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Here's one from Zoe. This really broke my heart, Dr. Phil, when I read this. She says, "Dr. Phil, we're a family of four. My husband, a 17-year-old daughter, and a 16-year-old son. Our family shows very little respect for each other on many levels, from telling each other to shut up to constantly bickering over unimportant topics. It seems as if someone is angry is with someone else all the time. There's very little harmony in our home. We're an otherwise normal family. Our kids are well adjusted and good students. I want so much to break this circle of disrespect, and I don't know how. Can you help me?"
Well, I hope so.
I hope so, too.
And look,
It broke my heart to read this.
first off, you're not a passenger here. You are the adult. And you and your husband have to set the tone. And as corny as what I'm getting ready to say sounds, give it a try. I want you to sit down and have a family meeting. And that means turn the television off, get the iPhones, iPods, everything out of their hands and ears, and don't do this in the middle of a big argument. Oftentimes when things are calm, people think, well, let sleeping dogs lie.
Right.
That's not right. This is the time that you need to sit down and have a calm discussion. And, excuse me, what this discussion needs to involve is some pride in the family name, some pride in who you are. I know, Marlo, when my boys were growing up, and, you know, they would bicker back and forth or whatever, I would sit down with them and say, "Look, you are a McGraw, and that means something. There are certain things we just don't do. We don't call each other names. We don't yell at each other. We don't do that." And it wasn't long after that that the older brother had a friend over, and little brother went to get something to drink. And the friend said, "Let's hide from him." And Jay, the oldest, said, no, we don't treat each other that way in this family.
Oh, wow.
Now, we just overheard that, Robin and I in the
Wow,
hall. We went,
yes.
so, you
That's
really
it,
have
yeah.
to set the tone and hold yourself to that standard. As adults, don't model that behavior. Don't call each other names. Don't yell at your children. If you begin to model this, it will calm down. But teach them to take pride in your family
That's
name.
wonderful. You know, my dad did that.
It makes sense,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
Yeah, my dad did that too. It's really lovely. This is from Roxanne. My daughter's only 6, but she's already acting out in school, stealing toys away from the other kids in her class during playtime. I want to put a stop to this behavior before it gets worse. What can I do? What does that mean when somebody starts stealing other kids' toys and all that?
Well, it's a boundaries issue, right? I mean, and look, children are hedonistic. You know, we always say, innocent as a newborn babe. Babes aren't innocent. Trust me.
Manipulative.
They are manipulative and power-seeking. And then they need to be because that's how they survive, right?
Exactly right.
They cry and they yell to get what they want and need. This is a child that needs to be socialized at this point, and she needs to understand that there are consequences for her actions. That if she takes other people's things, then she sacrifices something that is her own. She needs to understand that there are consequences to what she does. And here's the thing. Ask her early on, tell me how that child feels when you take a toy away from her. When you steal something from her, how does she feel? And stay with that till, even with her limited vocabulary, she can give you an empathetic response. So she understands that it hurts the other person, that they've lost something that was theirs. And once she can articulate that, she'll begin to show empathetic behavior, and that will stop.
This is from Home and Garden 143. Dr. Phil, my teenage daughter left her AIM up on our family computer, and while I was online, an instant message popped up calling my daughter a bunch of derogatory names. When I confronted my daughter about it, she told me she doesn't even know who this user is, and that he'd been instant messaging her for weeks. How can I find out who this person is and put a stop to this? I feel so helpless.
Well, you are a little helpless in this situation, and that's a sad fact, and here's the reason why. You probably will have a difficult time finding out who this person is. Look, kids have so much more knowledge about how to use the internet and the web than we do. They have different screen names. They route things around where it's difficult to find out who they are. And if you do find out who they are, the truth is, sadly, there's probably not much you can do about it. There are laws to protect cyber stalking and cyber bullying, against cyber stalking and cyber bullying, but the truth is it's probably not going to rise to that level. Now here's where you're not helpless. She can unplug from this. This is one of the problems with these social networking sites and these teens getting involved with all this technology. They have the knowledge, but they don't have the wisdom, and that's where we come in. We don't have the knowledge of how to navigate all this, but we do have the wisdom to know when to unplug. I mean, if you're getting that sort of thing, there is the ability to block this person from having access to you as far as your phone number, instant messaging, or whatever. Now, they can change their name and come back in another way, and that's just one of the downsides of doing this. What you want to make sure is that your daughter doesn't engage. You don't want to start answering back and start an argument. That's just like throwing gas on a fire. Don't do that. Get her to unplug. As soon as she sees it, delete it. Block the number. Do what you can to find out who it is, but the chances are, frankly, yeah, I'd love to have a better answer for that, but they're just not.
Well, what did the spam take care of that?
Well, you can block a username where they don't have access to you, but that's about the only thing you can do.
This is from Carla. This is interesting. What about bullying in the workplace? Fear of losing your job if it's a superior, or if the HR does nothing about it if it's from a coworker. You can quit, but sometimes one's life just doesn't allow that. What do you do?
Well, the answer is not to quit your job. I mean, look, you don't know that you're not going to find a bully in the next workplace. And HR is there for a reason. And you say in your question if HR just does nothing, and you pose that as a question, they won't do nothing. They will begin a file on this person, and that is the proper route to take. First thing to do is look this person in the eye, if you're comfortable doing that, and say, look, you seem to really have a problem with me, and I think you're being inappropriate, and I'm going to ask you to just leave me alone. We don't have to be friends. We just have to respect each other as adults and coworkers. If you're not comfortable doing that, which oftentimes the victim is not, then go to HR, explain what's happening, and ask for the intervention at that point. Look, when somebody's being inappropriate with you, it's like I said earlier that you want to tell children. Telling is not tattling. This is part of the mechanism to get people the peaceful existence in their workplace or on the internet or in their home. Go to the proper authority, which in this case could be your immediate supervisor or HR, and we'll find out exactly what they're going to do or not do. If they don't do something, then you have a different issue and you may need to seek legal recourse. But at this point, I would really hope that you would go to HR. Again, don't be hysterical. They're on your side. They're there to keep peace in the workplace. So give them a chance to do that. Use the mechanism that's in place.
Because everybody does, when you said earlier, don't go with your hair on fire. It is helping people go, help, help.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you have much more credibility to go in and sit down and say, look, here's what's happening. And if you have emails or you have notes or you have letters or you have witnesses, be very specific. Save all of that stuff and keep a journal. At 11:15 on the third day of the month, the following happened in this location, in this place. Be precise, be accurate, keep a log. That's very convincing.
That's great. This is from Allison. How can I get my money-obsessed husband to focus more on his family?
Well, I should probably recuse myself on this as a husband.
I don't think so. I've seen your family. They're pretty good.
Well, here's the thing. Look, relationships are a negotiation, right? I mean, any relationship's a negotiation. And the negotiation never stops. And so you want to sit down and negotiate. And again, I said earlier, when you get into an argument, when you have a problem, you don't want to go in with the idea of making the person comply or agree with you necessarily. Let him know, look, I feel that you are too focused on money. I think that you value that above family, and that hurts me, and I would ask that you consider that because I'm feeling bad about this. Then you need to be willing to listen. And probably he's going to say, look, I feel a responsibility to keep a roof over our head, to provide shelter. I mean, even if you work, he may still hold himself to that standard. And he may have some good points as well. That's what negotiation is all about. It's give and take. What you need to come up with is a budget that both of you can sign on to and that both of you have the integrity to stick with. So negotiate this. Talk about it. Don't yell and scream and fight. Negotiate.
And don't you think also starting to get together and talk about how we can plan to have some family activities? You know, let's this spring do this together, or let's go scuba diving together, or starting to make time, putting time aside for it. I think that's
a very good point, and that's part of the negotiation. You know, there comes a time, Marlo, I think when you're in a disagreement, that you stop complaining and start specifically asking for what you want. Instead of saying, here's what I want you to not do, be specific about here's what I want you to do. I want us to go to the park on Sundays. I want us to have a date night. I want us to turn the television off and hang with the kids, or cook out every Friday evening, or so. Be specific about what you want. For men in relationships, we need the dots real close together and connected with a bright, bold red line. Tell me the formula for success and I can do it.
Well, you know, I love to go to the theater and Phil's not so crazy about it. So I just say to him, I want to see this play. Can we go?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You ask for what you want, and then the next thing you know, there you go.
But I've given up hoping that he'll plan the theater night. That isn't going to happen. Okay, this is from Judy Baby. I so enjoyed your program with the Three Brothers intervention. My question is, how do you intervene in a friend's life when the friend doesn't have family or to help, or friends that want to intervene?
Well, you can do this on your own. Look, the whole point is you want to build an intervention team. And if you just simply don't have one, and be sure you check everything. I mean, are there brothers or sisters, mom, dad, even of an adult friend? Do they go to church? Can you involve someone from there? But if you have to, you can do it on your own. Now, I think because of a lot of media exposure, sometimes we get the idea that in an intervention there's a lot of yelling and screaming and gnashing of teeth. And that's exactly what you don't want to do. You want to be very fact-based. In other words, don't just say, I think you drink too much, or I think you're using drugs. You want facts. You got a DUI on April 17th a year ago. You got another one on February 2nd this year. Here they are. And always begin with the end in mind. Don't do an intervention unless you have a plan for where it's going to wind up. Identify a facility. Identify a 12-step program. Do something. So if they say, okay, yes, I need help, then you go, oh, well, what are we going to do? Begin with the end in mind. Have a plan for what you do if they finally agree to get the kind of help you want.
That's a very good
My love for
point.
you
Okay, here's
is
Carol. Dr.
unconditional.
Phil, many of the members of my
What I
family suffer
provide
from
for
depression
you
and anger
is
issues.
conditional.
What are some tips or
I'll love
approaches to
you if
dealing
you
with
make
big
F's.
emotions for people who suffer
But I
from
won't
these
buy you a
issues?
go-kart.
Well,
So
these are
certainly
big issues in anyone's life. Depression is a mental illness. There can be a lot of reasons for depression.
And oftentimes with these circumstances, if it's what you're describing, if this actually is depression, and there is an anger issue, then it's probably above your pay grade. I mean, it probably means that you need professional intervention. And if that means getting them to some professional help, then do that. You may think, well, we don't have the money to do that. Look, pastoral counselors are very effective. There are often community mental health centers that charge based on the ability to pay. So it might be $10 an hour for a session, whereas if you went to a regular therapist, it might be $110. So there are resources. So what I would encourage you to do is check out what your community resources are. And then here's the key. When you talk to this person, do it one-on-one. Don't do it with other people around, because sometimes there can be an ego
Dr. Phil,
involved.
I've watched so many of your
And you
shows
don't
about
want to
addiction
say,
and ways
you
handle
need
addict.
to do this.
My son is a drug addict.
What you want to do
And at
is
one time, I
say,
guess I convinced
I'm
myself
asking
was
you
recovering.
about this,
He
I'm
continues to
offering you
use it, and I
this
continue to love him.
because
I
you
have done
deserve
all
it.
the things people say
Wow.
I
Because you need
I
it,
wish I
because
could
you
turn my
deserve
back
it.
on this and be
That's
done.
And
But I
that
love you.
really can help
It has
them
love
not
in
be
it.
so
It has love in it.
defensive
Yeah,
about it. Say,
right.
look, I see your pain.
Right.
And, anger itself is nothing more than an outward manifestation of hurt, fear, or frustration. So when you talk to a person about their anger, just take anger out of your vocabulary.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk to you about your hurt. I want to talk to you about your fear, your frustration, because they won't be near as defensive about that. Do this from love, do it from care, and say they deserve it, they don't need it.
Here's one from Sandra. This is a parenting question. How can I get my kids to understand I'm not punishing them when I refuse to provide them with everything under the sun?
Well, look, we have raised an entitled generation. I mean, we truly have, where they truly believe that, look, everybody else has this, I want this. And you've got to let them understand, look, we need to do what A, we can afford to do, and B, what is appropriate for you. Now, I always told my kids this, Marlo. I said, look, my love for you is unconditional. What I provide for you is conditional. I mean, I'll love you if you make F's, but I won't buy you a go-kart. So I always said to them, look, if you have an A level of performance in grades or conduct, whatever it might be, if you have an A level, then you're going to have an A lifestyle as much as I can provide for you. If you have a D level of performance, you're going to have a D level lifestyle. So you have to teach them how the world works. Because when they get out there with somebody that doesn't unconditionally love them, they're going to pay for performance. If they misbehave at work, they'll get fired. If they yell and scream and call names, people will run them off from a relationship. So you've got to teach them that this is a contingency management world. Your love is not contingent, but everything else is. Let them know you earn certain things. That doesn't mean you get everything, but what you do get, you earn.
Have you written a book on parenting? You must have.
I have.
Yeah.
It's called Family First.
Oh, I've got to get it.
You will leave here with a copy.
Hint, hint. I didn't mean that.
Oh, no. I'd love for you to have it. Excuse me?
Thank you. Okay, here's one. This is a difficult, and I think you're going to be very helpful here. This is from Anne. Dr. Phil, I've watched so many of your shows about addiction and the ways to handle an addict. My son is a drug addict, and that at one time I guess I convinced myself was recovering. He continues to use, and I continue to love him. I have done all the things people say I should do. I wish I could turn my back on this and be done, but I love him too much to ever give up. Please help me, Ann.
Well, Ann, look, what I'm getting ready to say to you is probably going to be difficult for you to hear. First off, drug addiction is a disease. It's a complex disease. It's resistant to treatment. It is subject to relapse. And it takes a lifelong commitment to overcome this. What you want to be careful about is that you're not doing the things that make you feel better, even though they may not be in his best interest. Like you might say, well, I love him so much, so I'm going to look the other way. I don't want him to hate me. Well, what you're doing is you're putting your emotional needs above his needs. Sometimes you do have to play hardball. And if you continue to house him, clothe him, feed him, and nurture him, which makes it possible for him to self-destruct, then you're not doing him any favors. What he needs is somebody that will confront him and say, you are using drugs, don't tell me you're not, and again, work out your intervention team and work out your intervention. Because once he is on these drugs, you're not dealing with him, you're now dealing with the drugs. He is in an altered state of consciousness. Don't do what makes you feel good in the moment at the expense of his chance to live. Drug addiction will kill him, and you'll be burying your son if you don't step up and do what you need to do.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's good advice. You're lucky to have gotten it straight from Dr. Phil. Well, we're out of time. We've got a million more questions, but we have to stop. I don't want to, God knows, but this is just one of many opportunities you have to communicate with Dr. Phil, certainly on his show and through his Facebook and Twitter and website and, oh gosh, so many ways. You're everywhere. We can always find you.
Well, you can find me somewhere.
Well, goodbye, everybody. Thank you. I'll see you next week.